everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about Trainspotting and its brand new Criterion Collection 4K Blu-ray that just came out. So Trainspotting was originally released in 1996. It is directed by Danny Boyle, written by John Hodge, based on the 1993 novel of the same name, and John Hodge and Danny Boyle were just working with Ewan McGregor on the last film, Shallow Grave, which also took place in Edinburgh, Scotland, and they decided to get the old band back together for this film, and this film became a huge international hit, whether it actually be for the film itself or the Trainspotting soundtrack, which was also a huge mega hit in the 1990s. It was so good, it even got a Trainspotting #2 release with all the songs that actually weren't even included in the film. They were just songs that they were using in the early stages of making the film, and just songs that just kind of got cut at the last minute. That's how big of a soundtrack the Trainspotting soundtrack was in the 1990s. But the film itself also became a huge international hit. Without this film, I don't think we would have gotten Obi-Wan Kenobi played by Ewan McGregor in the Star Wars prequels. I think this really shined a light on him that he very well deserved. Ewan McGregor, I've always felt like, is one of our most underappreciated actors. No matter what you ask him to do, he always brings it to the table. Even playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is a very badly written character in the Star Wars prequels, but most people agree Ewan McGregor was the best performance in all the prequels. He gave the standout performance. That's why people were begging for him to come back in the Obi-Wan TV series, and he did a great job in that as well. But in this movie, he's playing something else. He's playing Renton. And him and his buddies, Sick Boy, Benji, Spud, Tommy, you know, they all got their own addictions. A couple of them are addicted to heroin. One's addicted to alcohol and just really, you know, getting that sensory overload. That's Benji, who would just be my least favorite person to ever hang out with. This guy is just a loose cannon, and he's probably the biggest psychopath in this film. He's the one that's really got the most issues, but, you know, he's got his friends who kind of stick by his side, despite just being an over-the-top and just flat-out asshole most of the time. But Ewan McGregor, he's the heart of this group. He's the one who really wants to get out of this life. And at the very beginning of this movie, we started off with that very famous Choose Life speech. We actually bookend the movie with that as well.
Choose life, choose a job, choose a career, choose a family, choose a big television.
And we get to see the perspective of Ewan McGregor's Renton, how he changes from the beginning of the film to how he ends up at the end of this film. And there's going to be some spoilers for this film throughout this review, so if you want to just jump ahead to the 4K Blu-ray review, you can do that right now, because I don't want to ruin this movie for you, because it is fantastic. It's just 93 minutes of pure energy. This movie is paced fantastically, and again, a lot of that heavy lifting is done by the amazing soundtrack in this movie and the great character work. These guys just can't get out of their own way. Like we see in the beginning of this movie, Ewan McGregor says, why choose life when you can choose heroin? And it is a very dark drug story. These guys are really just falling down the hole. They are stuck on heroin, and actually very early in the movie, Ewan McGregor already knows he has a serious problem, and he decides to get off it. And we get this really crazy scene of everything he has to eat, whether it be tomato soup, mushroom soup. He sets up this shitty TV to watch, which is really funny to me. You know, that TV is absolutely awful, and this is going to help him kick his drug addiction. He's got to stay locked in there and just somehow beat heroin. And he actually does for a very short time. I actually think that Trainspotting really does capture drug addiction almost perfectly. Despite this being a very funny movie, it's a very dark comedy, this movie, but it really does capture what drug addicts have to go through. How they want to get off the stuff, but they just can't. They always get dragged back. And at one point, you know, they're all off of it. They're all doing pretty well with themselves, but then it just gets darker. You know, even while Ewan McGregor is trying to get off the drugs, we see this scene, which is actually in the worst toilet in Scotland, they call it, which is a very disgusting scene. It's actually based off the scene from A Nightmare on Elm Street with Nancy getting sucked down into the bathtub. But of course, Ewan McGregor gets sucked down into this just shitty, disgusting toilet that he goes diving down into to get his suppositories. And you know, it does kind of feel like that scene, just in a grosser way. Apparently they use chocolate to make the water look like that, but that is just absolutely disgusting. But it is one of the most iconic scenes in film history, and this is all taking place while he's trying to get off the stuff. But then of course, him and his buddies, they have a great line. We decided to make the healthy decision to get back on heroin as soon as possible, but then of course it ends up just getting even darker, and this is where we end up with one of the most iconic scenes, one of the darkest scenes. It's very, very rough to get through for a movie that had been pretty funny up to this point. You know, we do see people doing heroin, but no one really got hurt. But these people are so deep in their drug addiction, none of them were caring for a baby that was around them. And then it turns out it was actually Sick Boy's child, and the baby unfortunately ends up dying. And I mean, they show you the dead baby, and it is gruesome. If that doesn't tell you how dangerous drugs are, and that doing heroin could just end up ruining your life. And it does pretty much ruin their lives. You know, Ewan McGregor wants to get out of this, and he's the one that we see has the most hope of getting out of it. And then finally his parents just say, fuck it, we have to do something. And they decide to lock him in his childhood room and get him off the drugs the real way. Because at first they tried him in a rehab facility, but they're giving him methadone, and then he ends up overdosing on heroin anyway, so it's kind of pointless. So they decide to do it the old-fashioned way. Cold turkey, we'll take care of you. And it actually works. He ends up getting his life in order. Everything seems to be going well.
For the first time in my adult life, I was almost content.
But of course, his friends decided, you know what, let's get back in with this guy. You know what, he's doing well, we can definitely ride that for ourselves. And they end up stumbling into a drug deal where they get a good amount of heroin that they're able to sell for 16,000 pounds. And this is bringing us to the conclusion of this film where Ewan McGregor decides, you know what, Begbie has been such an asshole. We see one point in this movie where he just attacks a guy in a bar for really no reason, just because he's a hothead. And he's always just kind of been a hothead. And it's really dragging the rest of the group down. And the only person that Ewan McGregor feels bad about ripping off because he takes that 16,000 pounds and he decides to take it with him and just rip everybody else off. But the only person he feels bad for is Spud, and he even says Spud wouldn't hurt a fly. He deserves this money. And he says that Sick Boy would have done the same to him had he thought of it first, which makes sense. But Sick Boy is actually one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character other than Ewan McGregor in this film. The guy loves James Bond, and one of my favorite scenes in this movie is when the two of them have sniper rifles. They're in the park. It actually very much reminds me of a scene in The Professional, and it actually might be a deleted scene, but Natalie Portman and Jean Reno, they're on a roof and they're got their sniper rifles looking down at a park, and they ended up shooting a paintball bullet at somebody to help them practice shooting guns. In this movie, it's Redden and Sick Boy shooting BB guns at people, and while they got their sniper rifles, they're doing impressions of Sean Connery, which is just absolutely hysterical. I love that.
Do you see the beast? Have you got it in your sights?
Clear enough, Mitch Moneypenny. This should present no significant problems.
The James Bond aspect of Sick Boy really does, you know, for the film fan in me, love Sick Boy. And then this movie is also shot very well. It's paced so well. There's a lot of deleted scenes for this film, so you know that they cut out the scenes that they felt were not going to help with the pacing of this movie. The tone of this movie is fantastic. It's very original. It's also very dirty and grimy, just to really sell where these people live and how bad their drug addiction has gotten. The clothes that they're wearing are all dirty and disgusting for the most part until they start cleaning up. But when they're in their drug-fueled apartments and everything, and all the clothes they're wearing and how disgusting and dirty it looks, the production design is incredible for this film. And this new Criterion 4K Blu-ray is only going to make that stuff pop, which we'll get to in a second. But overall, as a film, Trainspotting is one of the best films of the 1990s, has one of the best soundtracks of the 1990s, has some of the best performances of the 1990s, led by Ewan McGregor, and he deserves to become a star for this performance. He really just nailed this role. He even apparently wanted to try heroin for it, but he decided, you know what, that's probably a bad idea. And Ewing, I completely agree. Smart decision there. I've heard once you try heroin, it's really hard to get off it. Even for a movie role, that was probably the smart move, buddy. But either way, Danny Boyle made himself a classic film here that actually did get a sequel, T2, which is actually pretty good. Personally, I don't really love it when they do legacy sequels that long after the fact, especially since I love the way this movie ends, bookending it with the Choose Life speech and how now it means more to Ewan McGregor's character than it did in the beginning. At the beginning, he didn't give a shit about joining the system. No, he's like, you know what? I got heroin. That's all I really need. There's no way out for me anyway. But at the end of this movie, he's like, you know what? There is a way out. I can lead a happier life, and I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to let my friends drag me down anymore. I'm going to go out there, live the life that I want to live, and find a way to somehow be happy. And I think that's a perfect ending to this movie. And it's a great film. And if for some reason, by any chance, you haven't seen Trainspotting yet, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. And maybe this new 4K Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection will be your first time checking out this film. But even if you can't check it out in the Criterion Collection, I can just highly recommend you check this film out any which way you can. Stream it, no matter what. This movie is one of those important films of the 1990s that every film fan, every cinephile needs to see. But anyway, let's dive into this 4K Blu-ray review.
Some people hate the English, I don't. They're just wankers. We, on the other hand, are colonized by wankers.
Well, here it is, Trainspotting, courtesy of the Criterion Collection. And let's start this off with the packaging, because for me, this is a huge negative. I don't like what they did here. This isn't like your regular old-fashioned digibook that you usually see for the Criterion Collection. Think of Thelma and Louise from last year. That was actually a lot thicker. This is pretty damn thin, and the paper already, this was shipped directly from the Criterion Collection. You can see already it's starting to get some bends in the cardboard just from being shipped in the corners. That's the one thing I don't like about digibooks is the paper that they use on them. It's like that thin cardboard paper stock. It just doesn't really stand the test of time. So I really do think in the long run this will hurt it. I also don't really like how thin it is. But other than that, the artwork on the outside, it's iconic. The movie poster as it is. So what they did here, kind of doing its own little twist on that, it makes all the sense in the world. You come in the back here, you were to like pop this little sleeve out like this, and then you get the whole Choose Life speech right there. You come inside, this is going to be your 4K Blu-ray. You fold it out again. Right here in the middle, underneath this tab, is your reading material, which will feature a really good essay and find everything you need to know about the transfer. And then right here is going to be your Blu-ray disc. And then it folds up pretty easily back into place. And I wouldn't say that that is as offensively bad as the Citizen Kane release, but it's still not one of my favorites. I don't like it when they go that route, where you have to pull the discs out of sleeves like that. You know, personally, I would have liked them to really just go with the plastic inside, and you pop the disc out that way, and then it would have also been a little bit thicker. So overall, as far as the packaging goes, I'm not a big fan of that packaging, honestly. I think it feels pretty cheap in my opinion. I mean, I'm still glad that they tried to do a little bit extra with it. They tried to make it feel like a very important release from the Criterion Collection, but I just think that they kind of swung and missed on the packaging. It's not a big deal. You know, we're talking about the packaging, but as long as those discs are good, then it makes up for it. And the discs themselves, they are really good, whether you go the Blu-ray option or the 4K Blu-ray option. If you were to just buy this on Blu-ray, the Blu-ray itself, as far as the visuals go, they're really solid, and you're going to get the same audio tracks, which includes a commentary track, or you could have a brand new Looseless 2.0 track on there, which is what it's going to start. It's going to start in that on the Blu-ray and the 4K, and that seems to be the way that they want you to view this film, but there is an alternate DTS HD 5.1 on here, which for me, when I compared them both, I watched it originally with that 2.0 because that's the way they intended for me to see it. I thought it was really good. It's very well done, but I still prefer the DTS HD 5.1, mainly because this movie has such a fantastic soundtrack and makes such good use of music. You're going to want to hear that coming through more channels than just the front channels. Even though it doesn't sound compressed or anything like that with the 2.0, it's still a lot funner, in my opinion, to watch this movie with the DTS HD 5.1. But I do know a lot of cinephiles out there always preferred, especially if you're buying from the Criterion Collection, always prefer to use the original 2.0 track, the way the movie was intended to be viewed. In a movie like this that does feel down, dirty, and gritty, it does make sense, but personally, I chose the DTS HD 5.1. But either way, they're both great tracks. You can set the volume at whatever you want. You have almost no issues with it. It sounds better than it's ever sounded before. So it really isn't a bad track no matter which way you go. It's just going to come down to personal preference. Do you want to see it with the 2 channels, or do you want to see it with the 5 channels and get a little bit of bass in there? It's really going to come down to your personal preference. And that's also the same thing with the visuals. The reason why I pulled out In the Mood for Love from the Criterion Collection, Mean Streets from the Criterion Collection, and the 3 Colors trilogy from the Criterion Collection, all 4K Blu-ray releases in the last couple of years. What all those releases have in common with Trainspotting is they have changed the color timing, the color temperature of the film. So it's not going to look like how you might remember the film looking. Now, I have only seen Trainspotting a few other times, I would say like 4 or 5 times in my lifetime, and this is by far the best it's ever looked to me. But it is slightly noticeable, the color temperature and color timing change. I know this is going to upset some people. We're going to have a Mean Streets situation here, or how I felt about the 3 Colors trilogy and how they changed how those movies look, and they might not look how you remember them looking. And if you're a huge fan of the movie, it's definitely going to disappoint you. Same thing with Mean Streets. Mean Streets Transfer really didn't bother me that much, but there were so many people disappointed with it because they changed how the film looked and how the film looked and what the film looked like with how they remembered it. They remembered it looking very different, so they were disappointed with how Mean Streets came out. Despite it being the best way the film has ever looked, you're going to run into that same situation with Trainspotting because, in my opinion, the visuals were absolutely stunning. I loved them. There was no issue with it. Even with just the regular old-fashioned standard Blu-ray, the colors just pop now. That's what they were going for, and this was overseen by Danny Boyle. So he approved this transfer. This is the way he probably wanted his film to look now that the technology has caught up to it. But I just know that people are going to be disappointed because it's not the film that they remember. But the colors are so full now, even on that Blu-ray. I really don't want to sell this Blu-ray short. It is a beautiful Blu-ray. If you just buy the Blu-ray, which is $8 cheaper than the 4K, you're not going to even be disappointed by that. But when you do go to 4K Blu-ray, you're going to have HDR10 and Dolby Vision, and there are some dark scenes in this movie, and the Dolby Vision and HDR10 handle those scenes just perfectly, but it really is the colors that stand out to me. I never really thought of this movie as a colorful movie, but there's a scene where it's being lit in the background by like this orange light around Ewan McGregor, and that just looks gorgeous. You know, they're walking by certain apartments, and they all have like different colored doors. All that stuff just sticks out. At the very end of the movie, when they're in the locker and the blue lockers are behind Ewan McGregor and the money he puts down in front of you on this reflective mirror-like surface, like, that stuff didn't really stick out on the previous times you've watched this film, but now it does. Now it stands out so much. The green grass in Scotland, I mean, my God, the train that comes by, that blue and silver train, it just looks absolutely beautiful. The clothes they're wearing, all the colors pop now, which might be a little bit upsetting because, you know, the colors, they'd always look a little bit faded, which, you know, kind of blended into the fact that their clothes are very faded and dirty. But, I mean, there's one point in this movie where they're in an apartment and it's got like this cement wall behind them and you could see handprints that are in blue. And I never realized that what that was is that the wall is so dirty that the only clean spots on the wall were these blue handprints. And that's just because the wall is blue. That's what the wall really started out was blue, but now it's so dirty it looks almost black and gray. But that only stood out to me on this beautiful 4K transfer. But I just know people are going to be disappointed with the changes and that this is probably not going to be something that they expected Trainspotting to ever look like. But unfortunately for them, and I guess kind of fortunately for me, it's going to come down to the fact that I think the movie now looks better than it ever has. So these visuals for me, I think, are absolutely stunning. They're not the best visuals I've ever seen, but for me, Trainspotting has never looked better than this. But I know people are going to be a little bit upset about that. Very similar to how I was upset about the Three Colors trilogy, how people were upset about In the Mood for Love getting that very green colored transfer, but that's the way that Wong Kar-wai wants that movie to look. And I agree, I'd like the greener version of In the Mood for Love myself personally, and that didn't even need HDR10 or Dolby Vision. That's how good of a transfer that was. But I remember people being upset with that. And, you know, it hits me too. With the Three Colors trilogy, I felt like those 4K Blu-rays were disappointing because they weren't the movies that I remembered seeing, but apparently that's how they were supposed to look. So you can't really argue with that. With Danny Boyle doing the approval of this and it looks stunning, this is his movie. If this is how he wants it to look, then hey, more power to him. For me, it works, but I know that this is going to disappoint some people, especially since Trainspotting is such an important film. And the Criterion Collection knew that because they did not leave any stone unturned when it comes to extras. There are 2 documentaries on here. Both of them are looking back documentaries. There's an 08 one, and then there's one on here that's constructed together with footage from the film, new interviews, and I mean, my God, to get 2 documentaries on here, that's everything I could ever ask for. They didn't have to give us anything else. I would have been a very happy camper. I just wanted those documentaries, and man, we got them. Love that. That's what I absolutely love when it comes to extras, is those making of documentaries, and we got them on here. They're both fantastic. I can recommend them both. You also get every deleted scene. You even get some commentary on those deleted scenes, which is pretty damn cool. You pretty much get them looking back. You get interviews with artists looking back on the soundtrack for this movie, them looking back on the production, the clothes for this movie. I mean, they left no stone unturned. So really, as far as the extras go, they gave us everything. I am so happy with the extras. They gave us a commentary track as well. You know, it's not the most amount of extras I've ever seen on a 4K Blu-ray, but this is more on the high end of Criterion with their extras. Sometimes they'll half-ass it. Very rare. I don't want to sell Criterion short. Criterion is my favorite of the boutique labels. I think they do a fantastic job for the most part. And Trainspotting, I think overall, is a great release. I'm just very disappointed in the packaging. I know people are going to be disappointed in the visuals. Not me personally, but I know people will be. The audio is great. The extras are fantastic. But overall, I still think it's worth your money at full price, which is almost $40, which, you know, might be tough for some people, and I understand that. Maybe you want to wait for the Criterion sale, especially if you're not a huge fan of this film. But if you are a huge fan of this film, this is the definitive edition of it. I know you might be a little disappointed with the packaging, but you are going to absolutely want to see this in this form. And it's just great to go back to such a classic film like Trainspotting. So I can definitely recommend it. If I was going to give this film a score of 1 to 10, I would still give it a really solid 8.5 out of 10. But it's also Monday, so let's kick this over to Future John, who's going to be doing this week's digital code giveaway. That is correct. It is Monday, and that means it is time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video that we put out on Friday, I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. This week it happened to be, what is your favorite Guillermo del Toro film, and what is your favorite fantasy film? All you had to do was answer one of those questions in the comment section. As long as you did that, you came back to this video, I put your name on a magic wheel, I spun that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it landed on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And as far as the best Guillermo del Toro film, Pan's Labyrinth won. It was actually pretty close. A lot of people picked Pinocchio, which really warmed my heart. I love that film. I'll be reviewing that 4K here on the channel sometime soon. Just waiting for that price to go down a little bit. And then everyone's favorite fantasy film, it pretty much came down to Lord of the Rings. I was actually very surprised that only one person picked Legend. I thought that that would get a little bit more love. But the fantasy genre has never always been my personal favorite genre. I only really started coming around to it in the last few years. I used to not even be the biggest Lord of the Rings guy. But once I rewatched those extended cuts last year, those movies are all masterpieces. I still give the edge to Return of the King, but as a trilogy, those movies just all work perfectly together. That's how a perfect trilogy should be, is what the Lord of the Rings trilogy turned out to be. Each film complements the other, building up to a fantastic conclusion, and those extended cuts, despite being over 4 hours each, are well worth your time. You're going to need to set a week aside for them, but my god, the visuals, the audio, the acting, just incredible storytelling. So that's probably the biggest achievement in fantasy film, in my opinion. I mean, it did win an Academy, at least Return of the King did win an Academy Award for Best Picture. So that should really tell you that even the Academy had to acknowledge, man, Peter Jackson and everybody really knocked it out of the park with the Lord of the Rings films. But without further ado, let's spin this magic wheel and see who our 2 lucky winners are. First wheel spin coming up.
Taking the elevator, going up. Got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm in love with the good life. Can't give it up. Make it to the top and keep climbing. I wanna live it up. The good life. I'm coming up. I'm coming up.
Randy Time Stopper 3000. Right, Rand, we're gonna remove you. Spin again.
Taking the elevator, going up. Got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm in love with the good life. Can't give it up. Make it to the top and keep climbing. I wanna live it up. The good life. I'm coming up. I'm coming up.
Gunslinger Finger Banger 007. All right, Randy Time Stopper 3000 and the Gunslinger Finger Banger 007. I think this might be your second win, Randy, but definitely for the Finger Banger, this is your first win, and this is how it works. You reach out to me, my email address, letstalkentmt@gmail.com. You let me know which of the digital codes you want, and as long as the other winner didn't take it, then that digital code is all yours. And if you don't feel comfortable reaching out to me by email, we also have a Facebook, Instagram, the artist formerly known as Twitter. You could DM me there and let me know which of the digital codes you want, and the same thing, as long as the other winner didn't take it, that digital code is all yours. And if you happen to enter the digital code giveaway and you didn't see your name on the magic wheel, that's not your fault, that's mine. Reach out to me as well, because if I didn't put your name on the wheel, you also just got yourself a digital code. And if you didn't win this week, don't feel too bad. We do this every single week, so don't forget to come back to this Friday's video where we'll do it all over again. And also in this Friday's video, not only will we be doing the digital code giveaway questions, but we are also going to pick our winner for this week's channel membership giveaway. And this month, you actually have your choice. You can either get Thor Love and Thunder on 4K in this beautiful steelbook. You can get The Lost Boys on 4K Blu-ray. Or, because John Doe Juggalo already had this last month, so he didn't actually take it, we also have Waterworld available for 4K Blu-ray. So you'll actually have your choice of which of these 3 films you want on 4K Blu-ray. As long as you're a channel member, your name will get put on that magic wheel. We'll spin that just like we do with the digital code giveaway. The name it lands on, they're the one who wins, and they'll have their choice of these 3 4K Blu-rays. If you want to become a channel member, we actually have a link in the description below. You can become a friend of the channel. You can become a producer like John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, Nocturnal, and Mr. Smelly Potato. Or you can even become a channel director like Frank's Media and Reviews, who also has a great YouTube channel you guys should check out as well. Plus, he's just a great guy. Been a big supporter of this channel. But don't worry about it. If you got no money to throw our way, we don't expect anything at all. That's just to take your support of Let's Talk to the next level. But the best way to really continue to support this channel is just by simply liking this video, subscribing to the channel, turning notifications on, sharing the video, then just getting out in those streets and telling your friends about us. And then after you're done doing all of that, we'll be seeing you around.